Hi, welcome to Edible Landscapes. Today we're going to be talking about how to transform our landscapes with edible plants. My name is Lauren Hickman. I'm a program specialist here at Tarrant Area. Today we're going to talk about some great ways to grow food right in your own yard or on your balcony if that's where you like to garden. We'll be talking about how to incorporate plants that grow food into existing landscapes, and we'll touch a little bit on how to create a landscape if you're starting from scratch as well. So why would we want to do this, and why is it something that we focus on here at Tarrant Area Food Bank? We are all about providing healthy food in our community, and we love to make sure that people know how to grow food for themselves as well. And so we like to teach how to add food into wherever you are. Some of the benefits of growing an edible landscape, instead of just a beautiful landscape, is that you can actually save energy. You can save both your energy from going to the store versus just going out to your front yard. You can save energy from the transportation of food. So rather than having it shipped from other parts of, you can grow your fruits and vegetables right in your own yard. You can also have a great increase in food safety. So you can go right out. You don't have to worry about what hands have handled your food. You can go right out and cut your own. Nutrition is always important. So having more access to fruits and vegetables will make sure that you have ready access to all of the nutrients that you need. You can save water by making sure that instead of landscape, you're also producing food with that water. You're saving money because instead of just buying landscape plants and then buying groceries, you're getting kind of a 2-for-1. And of course, it's beautiful, and you can't get more convenient than going right out to your yard or your porch and harvesting some fresh food. So we're going to talk a little about how to get started if you don't have a landscape in place. This class is primarily intended to just get some great ideas for plants that you can substitute that are food producing plants that can go into an existing landscape easily. So we're trying to transition from an existing landscape primarily into something that grows food. But I know some of you may be starting with kind of a blank canvas. Perhaps you just have a yard in place and you're wanting to create more of a landscape. So here are a few ideas for those of you who are starting from scratch, and then we're going to get into talking a little bit more about the plants. The first thing that we want to do when we're considering elements of design is to respect the space you're in. So look around your neighborhood and make sure that the landscape you're creating is in place with the home that you have, the space where you are, and the neighborhood that you're in. If there are any rules of your neighborhood or your city that guide landscapes, please make sure that you follow those as well. Also, know your gardeners, know yourself, know your family, know your friends that will be helping in your space. If you don't like to spend a lot of time in the garden, make sure that you're planting perennial crops that come back every year that don't have to be replaced on a regular basis. Consider what you will eat. If your family doesn't like beets, that may not be something that you want to plant unless you know someone else that you can share them with. How else will you use your space is another consideration. You want to make sure that if you have someone who's going to want to play Frisbee, or if you have pets that will be using your space, you plan your food and edible crops to be out of the way of some of those things. Do you like formal or informal design? Consider if you want straight lines for formality, or if you want to make things a little more curved and relaxed. You want to consider if you are just incorporating some of your great food crops in landscape, which can make it a little more formal, or if you're crops, which makes it a little more informal or relaxed. Geometric shapes usually give more of a formal feel, where patterns, loose plantings tend to make a more informal setting. Always think about creating an outdoor room. So you want to think about creating a space that you want to be in. So we'll talk about how some of the plants lend themselves towards different elements of an outdoor space. You might want to create walls by growing okra or by putting in some trellises and growing some food crops on those. You may want to create your ceilings by having an overstory of a nut tree, perhaps, or a fruit tree. So we'll talk about how some of these different plants play into the different elements of design. If you're really getting creative with your outdoor space, you could even create furniture like this couch topiary out of something like thyme or a trailing vining type of perennial herb. So this is a chance for us to get creative. Now, if you have an existing landscape or if you're kind of in the second phase of your design process, here are some considerations about the individual food crops that you're going to be planting. You want to keep in mind their height. If you are looking for a tall plant, make sure that you're planting one. We want to consider the final height of our plants, of course, when we're planting. So if you know that you have a tree that's going to eventually be 15 feet tall, make sure that you plan for that and don't put it under the overhang of your house. If you know that a plant is going to spread out, it's going to be a vining plant or a climbing plant, make sure that you're giving it enough room to grow the way it needs to. Color can add a lot of variety. You could plan for a monochromatic color scheme, which means it's primarily green, and have lots of different shades of green and lots of different textures to provide visual interest. Or you can do color pops all throughout the landscape to make it interesting as well. So we will focus on that as we go through each of the plants. Also consider the plant life cycle. This is important because plants don't live forever. And if we are looking to plant seasonal vegetable crops, that means that eventually their season will run out and we will have an empty space in our edible landscape. Now, that's okay. It's something that we can replace by putting in a container that's full of another vegetable crop. So this is something that we can work with. It's just something that we need to be prepared for as we design our space. Now, we also want to consider light requirements, of course, when we are in the middle of planting our garden. If we're hoping to get tomatoes, if that's our goal in planting that particular plant in our space, we don't want to put it in the full shade because we'll never get our edible crop that we're hoping for. And then it's just an ornamental. Now we are in the cool season right now, so we're going to start by talking about some of our cool season crops. Now we're going to focus again on our food producing crops. These are going to be plants that grow well in this time of year and also add that element of visual interest in our. I do want to mention to all of you that the PowerPoint will be sent out as a PDF to you after the fact. I'm telling you that now because I want to make sure you know as we go through all of the slides for this PowerPoint, I want to make sure you know that you will have all of this information because it's very detailed. And we will not focus a lot today in this particular class on how to grow each of these crops. So the PowerPoint will be sent to you so that you will have that for reference as you start to plan. Today, we're just getting inspiration. Today, we're just getting ideas. I hope that you will chat in your ideas. Do go ahead and introduce yourself if you haven't already. Tell us who you are, where you're gardening. Tell us what kinds of plants you put in your edible landscape so that we can have a discussion. You can chat in the discussion as I'm talking through some of these plants. This is a good time for us to get inspired, and we hope that you'll share your inspiration with us as well. This is one of my favorite edible landscape crops. Artichokes tend to range between medium and tall. They fall in the tall category when they're in full growth and when they have produced the artichoke flower bud on top. Until then, they make a beautiful full medium-sized landscape plant. This is a great replacement for a small shrub. It makes an excellent hedge. Now, there is a season in the hottest part of the year where the plants will die back and you'll take those back down come back as small plants in the fall and be beautiful all winter. I will mention at this point that we are gardening and speaking to gardeners primarily in the Fort Worth, Texas, Tarrant County area. So if you hear me say that something grows well for us in the winter and you're gardening in a different area, please double check your zone to make sure that you can grow those plants in that area as well. So artichokes are fantastic. The nice thing about artichokes is that you food, but if you have a time when you are there to harvest every single day, you can let these go to flower and they produce a beautiful purple thistle that adds visual interest as well. Arugula can be a beautiful leafy green. This is a great replacement for clumping type landscape plants. So if you are wanting to replace something that might be like a grass in a landscape or a small clumping flower, arugula is a great option for you. This is what it looks like. This is a great form plant. You're going to use this to fill your space, not as much to create lines. And it does produce a beautiful, delicate white flower that you can throw in salads as well as eating the greens. So great one to throw into an existing landscape, or you can plant around it as well. Again, remember that all of the information about harvest time will be in that PDF. Do keep chatting in any questions as you have them, and we'll try to answer as many of those as possible. Beets are another fun, cool season crop. These give a beautiful red midrib. So when you're trying to plant your green, colorful plants, you get a little hint of that red midrib in there. And then of course, the large beet that's down at ground level. Now, these are a nice plant for a monochromatic scheme, so where you're primarily focusing on greens, or if you're trying to add color. These are a great plant for containers. Arugula also works very well in containers. So if you are trying to produce a patio garden or a balcony garden that has some beautiful color and visual interest, go ahead and put some beets in there as well. Now, broccoli is one of my favorite cool season crops. You can eat both the greens and the beautiful flower bud that we typically think of with our broccoli. The stem is, of course, an edible crop. So these are beautiful, large, full plants and that then produce that broccoli in the center. You can also get Romanesco, which is this beautiful fractal Fibonacci sequence type geometric broccoli that you see up in the top corner. If you are wanting to incorporate a broccoli into a more formal garden, I would suggest this because it gives you that, just that very geometric point of interest that people will absolutely talk about. Everyone will ask you about it. This also produces a beautiful yellow flower. So if you let some of the small secondary flower buds that form go to flower in, late spring, then you can actually use these to attract honeybees to your garden. You have that beautiful yellow. These are usually the first flowers of the garden, and they are also edible. One of my favorite things to eat is saute a few of the broccoli flowers and throw them on a pizza. You really can't get better than that. They're perfect in a salad. So remember that you can eat all of those different parts as you're planning your edible landscape. Cabbage is a great option for form. So when you're trying to replace something in your garden that makes a large, these can be 1 to 2 foot round masses. So if you're trying to replace something that has that shape, a cabbage is a great option. You can include different colors. So you can get purple cabbages, you can get green cabbages, you can get Savoy cabbage, which has a different texture. You can get a Napa cabbage, which has a longer, taller, more vertical shaped plant and head. And those are all fantastic as edible crops, and they give you a lot of variety. Now, I will point out here that when you're purchasing cabbages and kales, and chards. Sometimes you can purchase ornamentals, or you can purchase edible crops. Make sure if you plan to eat it, make sure you're purchasing an edible form of that vegetable. That makes sure that it has not been treated with growth regulators throughout its production, because you want to make sure that it is safe to eat. Typically, those varieties are as well. So just pay attention when you pick up those plants at the nursery if you're not growing them from seed yourself. Carrots are a textural addition. This has a beautiful lacy top. The carrot tops are also an edible crop. You can make a fantastic pesto out of these, or just toss them into salad for a different kind of green that has a little bit of a carrot flavor. And then of course you get the beautiful orange carrots on the bottom. Now the orange part of the carrot, or if you're planting red carrots or burgundy carrots or maroon carrots, any of those, of course, you're going to enjoy in your recipes. Plan to not enjoy the color of those and then only when it's ready to harvest. So you're really planting these in your garden for the edible piece and for the lacy texture of the tops and that beautiful bright green color. When you are planning your garden, carrots are a great thing that you can stick in between other sections. So this is a nice you can tuck in between your other established garden plants. Cauliflower is another one that you're looking for a large mass form element in your landscape design. You can get these in many colors. I will just point out to the gardener who wants lower maintenance gardening, make sure you do get self-blanching cauliflower if you are hoping to have that beautiful ivory cream color. Make sure that you're getting self-blanching unless you plan to wrap the leaves around your cauliflower to blanch them. And now if you are trying to get a different color, then you may not have to do that quite as much. If anyone has experience with that blanching process and wants to share in, feel free as well. Here are some examples of what these look like. Now, kale, collards, mustards, and chards are some of my favorite landscape plants. Greens that will grow the entire season. You harvest them a few leaves at a time. So the plants that you put in October, November, those plants are going to thrive and produce for you all throughout the cold season. So they come in multiple colors, multiple textures. You can plant an entire edible landscape just with these and be very, very happy with it. So here's some examples of purple mustard. You have your collard greens, you've got your different shades of kale. Now these are more ornamental type kales. So again, just make sure that you're getting what you hope to get when you make your purchases. If you want ornamentals, that's fantastic. If you want to have edible crops, just make sure that you're buying those from the vegetable section, not the ornamental section. So lots of different color options here. Chard comes in rainbow chard, which has reds, yellows, whites, sometimes oranges and pinks. These are absolutely gorgeous plants. And in our area, we find that we can keep these going even in the spring and summer. Typically, we'll get 2 years of growth on our Swiss chard. They are intended as an annual. They are typically a cold season crop, but around here, we try to get as much growth out of those as possible and keep getting a little bit of food out of that harvest throughout the year. Kohlrabi is a great plant to plant for interest. This is a pretty quick producing crop. It has this wonderful swollen stem that tastes like broccoli, and you can tuck it in small areas. It doesn't need a large space. You can, if you have 4 to 6 inches of growing space, you can tuck in a kohlrabi seed and have a delicious vegetable for cooking, or you can eat it raw as well. These also come in multiple colors, so add some visual interest. Lettuce comes in lots of different colors, lots of different textures. This is another great one that you can add in to really just any mix of edible landscape crops. You can mix this in with onions, carrots, radishes, tuck it into the border. So if you already have an existing border of shrubs around your home, you can tuck these in front of that and add some visual interest that way. Onions and garlic are a fantastic place to start. When you get into January, February, you can go and buy some little spring onions and plant those in the ground, and they make a great line plant. So they create excellent dividers between spaces. They create a beautiful vertical line that you can put throughout your garden. Clumps of these in white or purple or yellow can be a wonderful addition. You can also get bunching onions if you are more of a perennial gardener and you prefer to plant something that's going to continue to produce instead of plant something that's a one-time crop. Then you can also get some bunching onions and ever so often go out, pull up a bunch, divide that and replant one, and you'll have a whole new crop the next season. Now, peas are an excellent trellising option. So if you're trying to create walls or if you're trying to create a ceiling on a pergola or trellis, peas are a great option for cool season. They have a beautiful purple flower, the edible seed pod. You can even eat the small green tendrils, make a great saute addition to saute. So this is a beautiful element of design as well. If someone else has another cold season crop that works well on trellises that you would like to chat in, please go ahead and do that. We love to hear your ideas and what you have found to be successful as well. Radishes, you just can't beat radishes for easy. So if you are just getting started and you want to put edible plants in your landscape, start with radishes. In 30 days, you have success, and we could all use a little more success. So tuck these in anywhere that you have 2 to 4 inches. Go ahead and plant your radish seed. They come in a variety of sizes, colors. The tops are edible. You can roast those or turn them into a pesto, and they're fantastic. The French breakfast radishes are a very mild radish that are delicious. You can get these in white, purple, red. So just have fun. Grow very well in pots. So if you're creating a container garden for your landscape, go ahead and put some of those in there as well. Now, strawberries are an excellent. They do like water. You are keeping them well mulched with straw and watered well. These give you a beautiful evergreen vining plant that then produces a red or pink berry. Beautiful ground cover. So if you're trying to replace something like Asian jasmine or an English ivy and you need a ground cover, go ahead and try some strawberries. If you want to mix a little bit of sand into the soil, that will make them happy as well. So you can see that they are vining and they do reproduce into clumps. And so, as they produce their little baby plants on runners, these will spread throughout your garden. Usually that's what we're looking for in a ground cover. They will have a beautiful white flower as well. So that adds a little bit of spring interest for you. Now, perennial herbs are everyone's friend when you're starting with planting an edible landscape. So here this called foodscaping. Perennial herbs keep giving year after year. So you plant these once and you harvest from them for years to come. These are things like rosemary, thyme, oregano. You can have your sage will be a great perennial herb for you. You can even have some producing herbs like fennel. So if you're looking for something that's really large that will also attract butterflies, in addition to giving you an edible crop, plant some fennel in there. Chamomile is a beautiful flowering herb, and you can get that beautiful purple flower from the garlic chives as well. The top right-hand corner on your screen is one of my favorites. This is sometimes referred to as a vegetable, sometimes as an herb. This is sorrel, and this beautiful sorrel gives you the same effect as beets, but these are perennial. They are evergreen, so in the middle, it's exactly that beautiful. You can harvest those leaves and toss them into a salad, and it gives you kind of a tart salad green that gives you a lot of visual interest both in your garden and on your plate. So you can see just with these crops here, just with these perennial herbs, you get so much color, so much texture variety. You can create an entire edible landscape just from herbs and have it be absolutely beautiful. Now, some herbs are also annuals. So if you are wanting to plant some things that are just for that season, we have cilantro, parsley. In the warmer months, you can plant dill. So these are some delicious herbs as well. Now, when we move into some options for grasses, if we're trying to replace like a pampas grass or something of that nature, one thing that you could do is plant a lemongrass, which is a wonderful perennial, can be an annual, but sometimes around here we have mild winters and we'll get it to reproduce. But you can plant something like that, or a ginger can also be a nice option. Now, ginger around here is typically an annual because we usually have winters that are a little too cold. So plan to put that somewhere where you can dig it up and bring it inside if you're hoping to keep it for the next year. Now, when we move into the warm season, we have a whole new set of options. When you're planning your outdoor room, one of the items that I put on there is decor, right? So we want things that have pop, that have interest. Just like when we're planning a room that we live in, we want to have focal points and things that people will talk about. We want the same thing in our landscape rooms. And so we can introduce some of those in the warm season with edible flowers, with berries, with fruit producing crops. So we're going to talk about some of those as we go through the warm season as well. Basil is one of my favorite herbs for the summer. You always can put basil in a pot or in your existing landscape. Comes in a variety of colors. It produces a beautiful seed stalk. There's never enough basil, in my opinion. You can always make pesto out of this, throw it in pasta, or just enjoy it in your landscape. The flowers tend to be purple and are absolutely beautiful. You can also eat the seeds, so you can harvest the basil seeds once those are producing, and you can soak those in water and make a gel in them that you can use for cooking. So this is another multi-purpose plant that is absolutely gorgeous in the landscape. Now, beans and peas can provide you a couple of different possible elements. If you plant bush beans, then you're adding a form element to your landscape design. If you plant pole beans, then or southern peas, then you're adding a trellising option. And so there you can be growing a crop that helps you to produce walls for your living space, or to go up the side of a house to replace English ivy. You can also put these on a trellis or pergola that creates that kind of a ceiling space over the top. So this gives you some examples of the different colors and varieties that might be available to you. You can produce long beans, you can produce scarlet runner beans. So lots of different options for keeping your plate interesting as well. Blackberries are a great fruiting option that give you some delicious color. Typically, this is early summer. Depending on the variety, you'll have the white flowers followed by red berries that then turn black. And that's when you know they're ripe. Now, these do come in thornless varieties, or you can get the varieties with thorns. Personally, I find that the varieties with thorns produce the best. You get a little bonus for dealing with the thorns. But if you are planting by a walkway or somewhere where you have small children who might accidentally get caught in the briars and get hurt, then please stick with the thornless variety. Borage is an excellent edible flower. If you're looking for blue as a color addition to your landscape, borage is a great option. There aren't as many blue options in edible plants as some of our others. We'll talk about purple eggplants in a little bit. It's hard for us to grow blueberries here in our part of Texas. If you're in East Texas, you might be able to add a little. The blackberry gives us that dark purple, and borage gives us this nice light blue color. These are edible, so you can just harvest those flowers into a salad, and that makes it a lot more interesting as well. Now, eggplant is one of those plants that I would consider kind of a decor plant when you're planting an outdoor room. This is a large form plant that then has the eggplants on it. They can come in lots of different shapes, sizes, colors, purples, whites, striped. You can even, if you're looking for a monochromatic planting crop, you can actually get hermit eggplants, which are a small, round, green ball and absolutely delicious. So fantastic way to add some interest into your warm season edible landscapes. Now, these can tuck in front of a shrub. So if you have, just your traditional boxwoods planted at your home, you can just tuck these in and give them a couple of feet, 1.5 to 2 feet, and allow those to grow right in front. And it helps to add food and add color to your landscape. Let us know if you've tried tucking any of these edible crops into your existing landscapes. We'd love to know what's worked well for you and what hasn't. Okra is a great plant for creating a wall. These will get up to 5-6 feet tall, depending on the variety. So go ahead and plan for that. They will block out light because they are nice and tall. So plan to put them in a space that can handle that, where you intentionally want tall to go up either against a house or a fence, or perhaps you're creating a wall to divide a space. Just keep in mind in the shade of that okra and make sure that it is getting the sunlight it needs. Now you can get okra in varieties of colors as well. Typically around here we grow green okra. The Clemson spineless works very well, but the burgundy okra also is beautiful and produces very well. It just takes a little more frequent harvest, and those of you who have grown okra know it's already pretty frequent. So you can keep up with okra. If you can keep up with okra, it makes a beautiful edible crop for your landscape. The yellow flowers are unparalleled. They are absolutely beautiful. Peppers are another great crop that you can use to add visual interest and ornamentation to your garden space. Lots of variety with peppers. You can grow your hot peppers. You can grow habaneros that are hotter than I can handle, but I'm sure many of you will love them. They are beautiful Chinese lantern style fruits that you can then harvest when they're that golden color. You can also plant jalapenos, bell peppers. You've got red, yellow, purple. Really, your imagination is your limit when it comes to peppers. Now, fruit and nut trees can be a great canopy. These can create a wonderful ceiling for your outdoor space. Around here, these are the fruits and nuts that do well. These are a variety of sizes. So if you're looking for a large overhead canopy space, you're usually looking for something like a pecan or a walnut. The fruit trees tend to be a step down in size from that. But if you're looking for a beautiful flower, you might want to go with peaches. Fig trees provide an enormous harvest after the first few years. Now, again, do keep in mind their final growing height. Typically, that's on the tag when you buy your tree at the nursery. Make sure that you put it in a space where it can grow to its full height. You're going to get your best harvest after about year 3. So you don't want to have to cut your tree out just as it's starting to produce because you put it in a spot where it really can't grow to be its official height. So make sure that you plan ahead with that one. Edible flowers are a great way to attract pollinators, get an edible crop, and add beauty to your space. So here's a great list that you can think on when you're trying to add color to your garden. And I want you to see what some of these flowers look actually mixed into an edible landscape. You can see there are nasturtiums on the front here as well as marigolds. Now, one of the benefits of adding in edible flowers, adding in herbs, and creating an edible landscape is that it can help reduce your insect population. So in addition to helping bring pollinators in, it can help repel insects that are harmful for your garden. So these are a great way, nasturtiums are a great way to benefit cucumber crops. Great idea to mix things together. So don't be afraid to mix flowers and vegetables. Here's another great example of how you can pair your herbs and your vegetables together. I wanted to make sure you saw an example that has containers mixed in. So sometimes the containers are right up on the porch and sometimes those are just mixed directly into your landscape. Don't be afraid to use those containers and the pots for visual interest as well. It also can help to group things or to contain things that maybe shouldn't be planted directly in the ground, like mint. So feel free to just mix and mingle those. This is a great example of creating an edible garden that has some balance and color. You'll see the large purple kale in the foreground, and then the darker pot that's the water feature in the background. Those two things, because they're the same color and about the same weight, provide some balance in that space. So think through what your final design will look like, and don't be afraid to mix things in together. Okay, time to practice. If there are any questions that have come up through our presentation, this is a great time to ask those, and we'll stop for questions again at the end of the presentation as well. We want to make sure that everyone gets a chance to be heard. This is just a fun way for us to digitally practice adding in some of our crops. So if you're starting with a blank canvas, remember to add your tall vining plants towards the back. So this is a great spot to add okra. Again, make sure you've got enough sun, or put a trellis up and grow some of your vining crops like peas or pole beans. Then you can fill in with some of those more ornamental decorative form plants like tomatoes, eggplants, and then you can add your marigolds and some of your lower growing plants at the front. This is also a great place to add herbs down at the front. Sunflowers make a great attention grabber. So if you're looking to pull in some attention to an area and really focus that in, and you can plant those sunflowers and then have your sunflower seeds as well. So just a few tips on why we might plant these and considerations that we have as we're planting them. Starting with the front of the house, again, artichokes are my absolute favorite. I love them. Make sure that you're giving them enough room to produce. Give them, I like to have at least 2 feet of space for artichokes, if not a little bit more, because they will get large and beautiful. These are the plant out at our Tarrant Area Food Bank's Learning Garden. These are the plants that people always ask about because they are just beautiful. Fig tree, if you were planting this non-digitally, you would scoot it forwards towards you a little bit to make sure that that fig tree has plenty of room to grow and get to its full size. You've heard me say that several times because that's one of the biggest, most frequent mistakes that we all make when we're planting a landscape in a residential area, is we want it to look full and finished when we plant it. And if something has to grow for 3 years, it's not going to start at its finished height. So we just have to make sure that we're leaving that room, even if it feels awkward for a couple of years. Rosemary is a great thing to put up against the backside of a house. Remember, rosemary will make a hedge. So in this picture, you have that rosemary in front of the fig tree, which is excellent. You can also plant it in place of something like boxwoods. It will take time and it will take a little bit of attention, but once it gets established, you can cut it with a hedge trimmer. And then you're just filling in things like ground cover, strawberries, putting in your herbs. So just lots of good options for texture and color here. If you are thinking about how to get started and you're new to this, the handout that is with this presentation, which you should have received on Eventbrite and will also be emailed to you after the course, has a great set of kind of pre-plans. So ideas for getting started, combinations or plants that work well together. So this is Swiss chard mixed in, and then these beautiful purple cabbages at the front, again, using color, different textures, different heights. So just a few examples of how you can add these in. Cucumbers make a great trellising crop, filled in with peppers. You can plant your mashed tertiums in the front. You'll notice that this, in this example, you're picking up the colors of the house with the colors of the plants. So that's another good thing to keep in mind as you're planning. Which colors do you want to highlight? Do you want to tie it into the paint color that you have around you? Are you trying to do something complementary, or do you want it to be the same? Always keep in mind scent and fragrance as you're planning, especially if it's somewhere that you're going to walk by frequently. Onions are a simple item to put by a mailbox or in a border. Plant those in with strawberries and herbs. This is a great pairing because your onions are going to help keep insects away from your strawberries. So this is a great example of companion planting in addition to being a great edible landscape. So let's look at one more example. We have another mailbox where we're filling in our onion chives or garlic chives, our eggplants. We can fill that in with some beautiful purple basil. You can mix that in also with just some beautiful landscape plants. So the purple heart is a beautiful landscape plant that's not edible, but that you can mix in. Don't be afraid to mix edible and not edible. The only thing to be careful thereof is, make sure that you're not putting something that would be toxic to eat right by something that you're going to be harvesting, because you don't want to accidentally mix in something that's toxic. So just keep in mind what you're planting. Okay, any questions that have come up throughout the presentation? This is a great time to ask those. If you have any ideas you'd love to share that you haven't shared already in the chat, we would love to hear those now. And we can take a little bit of time to respond to any of that. So what we're going to do now, it sounds like most of the questions have already been answered in the chat. So we're going to go ahead and make sure you have the resources you need to join us in the future. Now, as you are harvesting from your edible landscapes, we hope that you will enjoy the recipes that are on our website. Until your harvest is in, if you are in need of some fresh fruits and vegetables, please go to our site to find food. We want to make sure that everyone has healthy, safe fruits and vegetables to eat, even when your garden's not ready to grow. If you would like to join us for future classes, we hope that you will join us at tafb.org/events. That's where our classes will be posted in future. And if you are in our service area, we hope that you'll come and volunteer with us. Anytime that you would like to get some hands-on experience at our learning garden or our kitchen garden. You can join us on social media, keep up with everything that's going on, and share some of your successes in your garden. Thank you for joining us today, and I hope you have a wonderful week.